Hello everyone, and welcome to Webinar Wednesday. I'm Jeff Jezzard with Vector Construction, and I'm excited to be your host and moderator for today's panel discussion. I'm pleased to present part 4 and the final session of our Strength and Repair series, where we'll be exploring, design, build, and alternative delivery methods for construction and restoration projects. We are extremely excited about this last session as we are presenting it in a panel discussion format. We are joined by 3 distinguished panelists from the construction field who will share their expertise and experiences with design, build, construction. Before we start, I have a few housekeeping things to take care of, so bear with me, please. These webinars would not be possible without the support of the Concrete Preservation Alliance, a global coalition dedicated to advancing best practices in concrete restoration and preservation. We extend our sincere thanks to our members and supporters worldwide, whose collaboration and dedication make the Concrete Preservation Alliance and educational events like this possible. Also, I wanted to mention the coalition's focus on sustainability. Sustainability is at the heart of what the Preservation Alliance stands for. One of the most impactful actions we can take in our industry is to preserve and restore existing structures rather than replace them. Restoration not only preserves our architectural heritage, but also significantly reduces environmental impact. On our We Save Structures website, we feature an environmental impact calculator. This tool allows users to compare the benefits of rehabilitation versus replacement for concrete structures. By entering the amount of concrete retained, the calculator provides valuable insights, including conservation of natural resources, reduction of solid waste in landfills, water savings, and minimized carbon emissions. We strongly encourage engineers and owners to leverage tools like this to make informed, sustainable decisions for their projects. Together, we can contribute to greener, more sustainable future. And finally, one last thing before we begin, we encourage everyone to take full advantage of the opportunity to ask questions during the panel discussion. Simply type your questions into the chat area, and we'll do our best to address them throughout the panel discussion. When submitting your questions, please include your name. Why is that? Because we're giving away a $100 Amazon gift card to the person who asks the best question, which will be selected by our panelists. So ask as many questions as you'd like. And with that being said, it's time to introduce today's webinar format and our panelists. As mentioned, we are presenting the topic Design, Build, and Alternative Project Delivery and Construction using an interactive panel discussion format. We will start off with a brief description and some background information on the different construction delivery methods, and then we'll have the panelists introduce themselves and share their roles and experience in the construction industry, and then we'll dive into the discussion. Here are our 3 panelists. We're lucky to have with us today Andrew Brecker, Anna Pridmore, and John Corvin. Andrew is a colleague, close friend, and senior project developer for Vector Construction, where he has been specializing in the restoration and corrosion mitigation of reinforced concrete structures for over 15 years. Andrew has an engineering background and is NACE Cathodic Protection CP4 specialist. Andrew specializes in condition evaluations, testing and investigations, cathodic protection, and design build restoration. John Corvin is the director of complex bridges and a lead structural engineer at Hardesty and Hanover. John has been designing complex bridges in the US and internationally for over 40 years, working at H&H and his previously owned company, Corvin Engineering. John is the current president of ASBI, which is the American Segmental Bridge Institute, and his extensive experience includes designing, leading construction, engineering, and reviewing more than 70 significant bridge structures with a total construction value of over $1 billion. And last but not least, we have Anna Pridmore. Anna is the Senior Vice President of Market Development for Structural Technologies, where she helps lead her company's growth in collaborative project delivery in the public sector. She received her PhD in structural engineering, is a licensed professional engineer, and has over 20 years of interdisciplinary experience, especially in large diameter pipeline asset management and renewal. Anna is on the National Board of Directors for Design Build Institute of America, the DBIA, serves as a DBIA certification instructor, and she is the national board liaison for the Wastewater Committee. She's also involved in Water Collaborative Delivery Association, American Society of Civil Engineers. Okay, enough for me. I'm obviously starting to fumble here. I'm going to turn things over to Anna. Anna is going to give us some more background on design, build, construction. The floor is yours, Anna.
Thank you so much, Jeff, and thank you all for joining today. Really glad to have you here. From starting out, it's important to first establish when we're talking project delivery, the model that most everyone's quite familiar with is design, bid, build. And that's where we have the owner having separate contracts with their design team and their prime contractor. Then the prime contractor would then have subcontracts with all of their sub-partners. This is conventionally procured based on lowest bid for the qualified but lowest bid thereafter. And compare that to design build, which instead the owner has a single contract for both the design and construction professional combined together into a design build team. They then bring all of their associated sub-partners, but the owner has a single point of contact from a contractual standpoint. When we're talking design build and design bid build, those are two of the most common project delivery systems. A third is construction manager at risk, which is where the owner has separate contracts with the designer and the builder, but the construction manager at risk team is brought on board. The builder side is brought on board much sooner in the process, so that there's a heightened level of collaboration throughout, because they're brought on well in advance of the design getting close to finalized. So being brought on at that earlier stage gets us closer to the design build model, but there is still separate contracts. Compare those project delivery systems, where that's how the teams are organized, to procurement methods. Those are about how the teams are selected. And when it comes to how the teams are selected, the most common approach for design build is either best value, which is where the owner is making a decision based on a combination of qualifications, project approach, and price for the total construction value, or qualifications-based selection, which is often done with what's called progressive design build, where the owner is awarding the contract and selecting the team exclusively based on qualifications and project approach, and there is not yet a pricing component involved. You can see there's other procurement methods that are done across the different project delivery systems, and then the contract format deals with how the teams are paid. The most common approaches for collaborative delivery projects would be lump sum or fixed price. And then the other one would be what's called guaranteed maximum price, which is where there's an upper bound threshold and it's more of a time and materials basis up to that threshold. And we'll talk further about some of these details throughout. When it comes to the planning side, a key difference between design bid build and design build is how the work takes place. And you can see here, when you have a design bid build project, the work has to take place exclusively linear and sequential. So the project has to get developed, design moves forward. Once the design is completed, then construction bid documents are created, then the project is awarded, and then construction begins. Compare that to design build, and inherent to design build has a lot of schedule savings. And the reason for that is that there's abilities to have what we call early work packages or separate work packages, where once a further enough point gets on the design for certain parts of the work, you can piece off that work package and then begin construction on that portion of the work. This allows for very large projects to get moving much more quickly, which has significant advantages for owners. Next slide. Integrating these two distinct functions, where design has an iterative approach, because every time you make a decision and say you change the operating pressure within a pipeline, or you're changing the load rating capacity on the bridge, things like that, it spirals through the rest of the whole design process and can impact a variety of other decisions. And that iterative process that takes place in design needs to get married up with the sequential approach when it comes to construction. And a key way to have that done is making sure that there's certain commitment milestones, and it's understood when a design has sufficiently progressed that it can be considered complete for certain work packages to then allow for those early work packages to get moving forward. Next slide. When it comes to the different approach to design build, as I mentioned, there's two primary different approaches. What has often been called traditional design build, or what's now been called best value design build, is where pricing for the entire construction project is known by the owner on day one before they make a decision of which design builder team to select. In this case, the two-step approach means that they will first put out a request for qualifications, receive back RFQ responses, and then they'll shortlist a maximum of 3 firms that then those 3 highly qualified firms would then submit on the request for proposals. Those proposals would include a combination of the project team that would be involved, qualifications, project approach, as well as price on the overall construction project. In order to provide a firm fixed price on construction, a best value design build requires the design build team to put in a lot of upfront effort to move forward a best value design build. So that's why it's so important to make sure that there's that two-step approach and that there's the shortlisted approach so that you don't have an unlimited number of teams putting forth that type of effort. Compare that to progressive design build, where instead the design builder is selected primarily based on qualifications. It can still be a two-step approach where there's an RFQ shortlisted at 3 for qualifications, and then the RFP, instead of including construction price, would just be the pricing for phase 1 inspection and design phase. The owner then, once they're in contract with the design builder, would have a separate negotiation that takes place down the line once the design has been completed sufficiently, and then you proceed forward with the phase 2 construction once the GMP has been negotiated for phase 1 from phase 1 to phase 2 construction. Next slide. DBIA, Design Build Institute of America, worked in collaboration with FMI to do some really excellent research studies. And the slide showed here is one slide of some of the research that was most recently released as part of this FMI report. This deals with the construction dollars put in place, and it shows you the cross-section of that construction across different project delivery approaches. You can see here that design build over the course of the last 4 years was approximately 44%, and it's growing for the next several years to be closer to 50%. When you add in alternative methods, which would include construction manager at risk, EPC, and others, you'll notice that the portion of design bid build has shrunk from 19% down to only 11%. So whereas in the past we've often called collaborative delivery alternative delivery, that language has often now been put by the wayside because collaborative delivery is no longer alternative. It's actually the majority of the construction dollars put in place. Next slide. You'll also notice this shows now looking at the data across different market sectors. And I'm really thankful with the esteemed panel that we have here today with Andrew, John, and myself all coming from focusing in different market sectors. And that gives a perspective of how design build plays across each market sector. But you'll notice that across the board, design build is increasing in size across all the different market sectors. Next slide. A key aspect comes in the public sector related to legislative authority. So if you looked at this map 20 years ago, it would be a very different map. Especially in the last 5-10 years, there's been a significant increase in additional states that now have legislation that allows them to move forward with progressive design build and best value design build as well. And there's additional legislation that's also taking place to continue elevating and permitting more use of design build. Just for example, just within the last year, there was some legislation that was passed in California that allows for progressive design build to be used by different public agencies. And just a couple months ago, New York City now has legislative authority to use progressive design build for certain applications as well. Next slide. A key aspect as well for design build comes to risk mitigation. And what you're seeing here is looking at the total effort on the project, because there's always a ramp up process, and then there's really where all the primary level of effort's taking place, and then the ramp down as you head towards full construction and closeout. What you'll notice is that when you compare traditional projects to design build projects, there's a heightened level of effort that takes place earlier in the project. And what's important about that is that the earlier in the project, making decisions to shift different design approaches or different variables and incorporate constructability feedback has less impact on the overall cost for those design changes. So design build really helps to mitigate risk by shifting the effort further to the left and allowing to accelerate when those decisions are being made and minimize their impact on the overall project costs. Next slide.
Before we move on, and I got to sneak something in here, which is kind of off script, but I had a quick question that said, for best value design build, how much information / detail needs to go into the proposal?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in terms of heading back again to that best value design build, I was just having a conversation earlier today with an owner who's newer to design build, and they've got a design build project that's going to be best value, but it's only a couple $1 million. And that's a drastically different level of effort of what goes into the design versus a best value design build that's $100 million. So it's going to be scaled depending on the project size and complexity, but holistically, the level of detail that needs to go into a best value design build is enough that all parties can have consensus that they understand the risks and they understand the full scope in a way that has meaningfully allocated what's occurring on the scope, and then how anything that's specifically highly risk related scopes has been addressed, and whether it's owned by the owner or owned by the design builder. We've seen some best value design builds that will often require designing up to about 30% level. Other ones will be a little bit less, but that all just depends on the project details and complexity. Great question. Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks for going off cue there for a bit.
Yeah, of course. Talking about schedule, a key detail when it comes to design build that is what I would say is the number one, if you ask many owners, the number one reason why they love design build is how quickly it can be done in comparison with design bid build. And the reason for that we talked about previously is that you can begin the construction activities while the remainder of the design is moving forward. So it allows you to substantially shorten your construction schedule, which could be a tremendous benefit, especially right now when there's owners that are having very large capital improvement plans that they're trying to move through on an accelerated basis. On any project, there will be some level of cost growth because there's uncertainties on day one that could lead to change orders or could lead to just the use of contingencies and allowance. But holistically, for all the data that's been reviewed, there is less cost growth when you compare design build to design bid build. And 3.8% doesn't sound like a lot, but when it's a $1 billion design build project, that's a big number. So the fact that you can better manage your costs with design build and it can get done faster starts to head to that, good, cheap, fast. Normally you pick two. In design build, if you have the right level of collaboration, you have the potential to achieve all three. Back to you, Jeff.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, thank you, Anna. That was a great opening for our panel discussion. I will now open the discussion with our first question to the panel. I'm going to start with you, Johnny, and give Anna a little breather here as she's delivered that perfect presentation.
She's working hard.
Yes, she is. If you could each briefly introduce yourselves and let us know, how is design build and other collaborative delivery methods impacting your role in the construction industry today?
Sure. Well, hey, everybody, and thank you for being a part of today's discussion. My name is John Corbin, and I maybe put us in a place of what kind of work we do. We are transportation folks, and we are public sector as a result of that, and primarily bridge. And so it puts us in a place very much different from where we started. We started about 45 years ago, and for the first 20 years, it was bid build, design bid build, and there were just never anything even on the scene. There were some folks dabbling with things, but no real legal modifications to our system. And then, in fact, when I started my own company in 2020, the result or the reason for all that was to take advantage of design build activity in rehabilitation projects. So it has really changed the way we work, think, live, breathe, and understand the various opportunities around us.
Andrew?
Thank you, Jeff. My name's Andrew. I've been with Vector here for 15 years. I started my journey with Vector working in the field and doing installations of cathodic protection systems, so more on the contractor and construction side. From that, I've worked into structural condition evaluations and also some design of cathodic protection systems. And now I've kind of worked my way back into working with Vector Construction as a project developer, so back on the construction side. So relative newcomer to the design build area compared to the other two panelists here, but being involved in those kind of different phases of the project, spending time in the installation, the contractor side, the evaluations, and even some design, it's kind of been a natural move into this design build for us. And I think we've been seeing an increased ask for this style of project delivery as Vector. So working in that evaluation, often get asked, how do you fix it? And do you know anybody that can fix it? Very two common questions. So just keeping that ball rolling, picking that ball up and running with it has been kind of a natural move into design build for us. So doing the evaluation, putting the team together to design and repair.
Andrew, I think you're being modest. 15 years is not a short amount of time, but that whole evaluation testing piece sure does help lead in towards the next questions. And I know you've been very busy in that world, I know. Anna?
That's great. Thank you, Andrew. As mentioned earlier, my name is Anna Pridmore with Structural Technologies. I'm part of the structural group. Structural Technologies is on the technical side and design build integration manager role side for projects, but structural group overall, we're the largest concrete repair company in the country, and we get involved across the US, Canada, and worldwide on projects primarily involving making structures stronger and last longer. So a lot of rehabilitation as well as some new construction. And one of the things that I've seen impacting our company overall is that we've done design build extensively in certain market sectors like the power generation and industrial sector, where from a mindset standpoint, they want a single point of accountability, they want it to get resolved, want to check something off their list. In the public sector, we've done design builds very consistently when it comes to emergency projects or certain clients that are dialed into that mentality. But we've seen a tremendous uptick, especially in the public sector, as the legislation has changed and as owners are seeing this as a tool in their toolbox that can allow them to address larger, complex projects in a way that's more efficient and more effective. So I think that's been the major shift, especially when it comes to public sector design build and that market shift.
Thank you. John, a question just came in. Is design build effective for a small rural bridge, say in the $1 million construction cost range compared to these large, huge projects?
Now, good question, and probably a lot of different opinions on it. I'm going to say that we have not seen many projects like that in a public sector of that small of a dollar volume size. Not to say that there aren't some very special projects out there. We did a very small bridge in this format in Vermont, just a unique project with an environmental constraint that did get us that low. So for that reason, they did choose that format. But by and large, they are usually, the ones we've seen are of a greater dollar value.
I'd like to expand upon what John said. I think the biggest what makes it, does it make sense for such a small dollar value versus not, really comes to whether or not the procurement department has the ability to simplify some of the procurement documents. Because as I was talking to this owner who's doing design build for the first time, they're working with an owner's advisor who is making sure to review through the documents, and they're used to writing procurement documents that are designed for, you know, $100 million plus projects, and saying, wait, pump the brakes. This owner's got a $2 million project. You gotta truncate down the requirements, because if you put in a 50-page in-depth submittal package that's required for a $1 million construction value, that's going to turn off a lot of potentially really qualified companies that could provide a lot of value. So it's making sure to right-size your solicitations and the level of effort required for solicitation to the size of the overall construction project. But in terms of the actual getting the work done, I'd call that more of a put solution here design build, where you're really looking for who's the key personnel, what's your approach, and what's your price, and then how are you addressing contingencies and risk, and cutting out a lot of the other complexities. It could absolutely be a great tool for you.
Perfect, great answers, thank you. And just a quick follow-up question, I guess, what do you believe are the most important benefits of collaborative delivery to the owners? Andrew, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, for us, we do most of our work on the private side with industrial clients, and a big one is just reducing the time needed for the project. Taking these structures that are in operation and reducing the amount of downtime, the amount of time the structure has to be out of operation, or being able to come up with a creative solution so that the structure can remain in operation during repair activities.
Perfect. Anna?
Major benefit that I see to owners for use of collaborative delivery is the peace of mind that comes when you have a trusted partner. Because there's so much work that's put into having to, I mean, you certainly always do the trust but verify approach, but if there's a constant worry that there's somebody who's taking advantage of you and there's an adversarial approach that's built into the process, that makes it really challenging, and it adds this whole other layer of anxiety for owners where they have to keep worrying about whether or not somebody's looking for loopholes in their spec to try to take advantage of them. And the shifted mentality to everybody coming in with a design build mindset and then working from a trusted partner standpoint. There's some great books that all talk about the speed of trust, and trust is the #1 thing that can truly help to accelerate projects.
John, what are your thoughts?
Well, you might add in best comfort or being able to be at peace with cost. Knowing at a better hand what costs will be, and having a better chance of getting to that number that you had planned on. Because so many things are worked out before, especially in the progressive approach, where before a guaranteed maximum price is established, there's a lot of engineering going on. So the propensity of change orders and things that you might find in a traditional delivery method, and I can't say traditional anymore, can I? In a historically old bid build environment, you just don't have that ability to get that close to where you really want to be, and then as a result, everyone's expectations are set, and experiences are usually very good.
Perfect. I also know one of the things is risk reduction, and I just had a great question come in, and it says, when and who decides on risk sharing, and whereabouts in the process is this kind of one of the key things we look at? So Anna looks excited to jump in on this one.
I love the discussion on risk, and this comes into a key concept that's hammered. So for those interested in a deeper dive in terms of design build, DBIA offers a 3-day certification class, and that one of the overarching messages is that risk is assigned and allocated to the party that's best able to manage that risk. So that's a key foundational item, and that plays out through looking at from the beginning of the project and the initial project scoping that the owner does before they've ever put out a solicitation. They'll go ahead and owners of choice will go through and they'll first allocate the risk as they see fit before they ever put it on the street. They'll often then head through and do a market sounding, where they'll check with the marketplace and say, here's the way that we're looking to scope out this project. Are there any fatal flaws? Are there some challenges that we need to address? And there's certain items, for example, geotechnical work is one that often comes up, and uncertainties with geotechnical work. I can see John nodding, and I'm sure you got a lot of opinions on how geotechnical work is addressed. But making sure that things like that have been appropriately evaluated and addressed. And then throughout the project, especially in progressive design build, who holds the risk can get shifted back and forth before you head to the final GMP negotiation. Jeff, I know you got some opinions when it comes to some risk allocation.
John?
Sorry, John.
No, that's good.
When we were chatting earlier with Anna, she had brought up those words, risk register. And so in Florida, for example, when you go after a design build project, part of that, once you are shortlisted, part of that process will be in the completion of all your documentation will also be the completion of the risk register, and then the assigning of dollar values to those things. And the other thing that Anna taught us very well is that risk gets priced, right? So so those things will be assigned and mitigated as best we can see between the owner and the design build team. The owner would then understand the reason for the cost associated with that risk register, and then that would help him in evaluating his best value approach.
Perfect. Andrew, I know there's some risk and also involved in known quantities and unknown quantities, and you've got some experience in that too, right, with that evaluation piece?
Yeah, we get into that a little bit, and with the evaluation side, I know we work to package in evaluation activities with a lot of these projects as kind of an evaluate, identify, and repair all in one step. Try and make those costs, upfront apparent to the owner, and it tends to work pretty well, especially on these projects where you're going to get into unknowns and unknown quantities. Being able to plan for those and have an idea of what you're going to expect comes in handy.
Perfect. I'm going to throw one more question in here before we move on because it's a good one, and bear with me. With design build, what is the best method to prevent the design builder from optimizing the design to be lowest cost design that just barely hold up past my warranty period? So this talks all about warranties. It seems unless the design build maintainer has a very long warranty period, that the design build incentivizes designs with potential long-term issues. So how do we deal with warranties and stuff like that?
So Jeff, from my perspective, I would take the response to that question slightly differently. Where I see one of the best ways to prevent that is to de-incentivize design build teams from having price be the be all and end all. At the end of the day, every design build project that a design builder team does is an interview for the next project. And if they're doing a design build project where they are not looking out for the best interest of the client, the expectation is they would not be accepted back in the future. So for, let's call it owners of choice, they'll typically have the actual price be 30% max, something like that, maybe 40, but certainly not a substantial portion of what's the selection criteria for a best value design build. And in the case of progressive design build, there would be no incentive of going for the lowest cost design because it's all about the right team, the right approach, and you're then collaboratively coming up with the design moving forward. So part of it's about the same concept how design bid build lowest price has an inherent conflict built in, where design bid build prime contractors would be incentivized to look for loopholes in the specification because they got to come in 12 cents cheaper than the other guy. If an owner puts out a design build package and it's best value and it's 90% based on price, you're going to have the same conflict-based disincentivizing people from doing the right thing approach. So it's really important to make sure that price is not so heavily weighted that it's going to be driving that type of inappropriate behavior.
Perfect. Okay, next question. The adoption of collaborative delivery methods like design build is growing. What do you attribute to that growth? What do you think, John? I know you like this one. I
do like this question. It's a great question because I mentioned we had worked with no other delivery method for the good first half of our career. But then the world started to change and people became more collaborative, and you didn't go sit in your cubicle and do your thing with rolled up sleeves and all that kind of stuff. So it really it seems to be something that also then suits where society moves with regard to collaboration. It really fuels the fire of young folks when they're coming out of school who see much more of a contribution, not just in the technical or construction or repair merits that they might have, but also in the way that they can interact with people and deliver. So I'd say maybe just start that answer anyway before getting off to the others, that it's just, I think, the way the world's starting to spin.
Andrew, you consider yourself in the younger generation. What do you think to that answer?
Yeah, I like it. I think that teamwork and the enhanced communication is a big one. I look at Anna's slides in the beginning and the description of design, bid, build, and you see all the individual steps. And to me, it's kind of like a, playing the game telephone, where it gets passed down to the next step and the next step. And, there's, some losses there in each step, and then it's got to make its way back up and back down all the time. So just that enhanced communication when you have everybody working together, I think it just provides a better product overall in the end.
Yeah. Anna, anything to add to that?
100% agree with what the other gentleman said, that being able to help make the process more streamlined and be able to incorporate feedback on a accelerated basis has tremendous benefits for the overall project success.
Perfect. We talked earlier too about recruitment, and with these kids coming out of school, and definitely the benefit where everyone's struggling for people, that recruitment side of things with this younger generation. I'm sure you guys see all that in your businesses, I imagine, right?
Absolutely.
I know that we do. Sorry for cutting in there.
No, go for it.
In fact, we still look for, again, we're engineering, so we're looking for those folks who want to roll up their sleeves and do good technical work. But this collaborative environment that we find ourselves in expands the capacity or the qualities we're looking for in people, even the youngest voice in the room has an opportunity to be heard in this kind of collaboration, and so feeling engaging and worth and all those good things really makes I think the jobs that they come into very, very meaningful for them.
I really like what John said about that the youngest person in the room can provide tremendous value. But one of the things in terms of a selling point when it comes to young people coming into a design build environment is that it provides opportunities for accelerated career growth, because people who were hiring for the right skill sets, not necessarily the right previous experience. Obviously, you want somebody, if you're hiring on the technical front, to have a solid technical foundation, but you can teach the specifics when it comes to the nuance. And there's also tremendous value in teams to have people who are in roles that are more, I often serve a role of what's called the design integration manager, the person who's facilitating technical information from different parties to make sure that the information gets distributed out to the right group and that everybody's aligned. So that person in that role isn't necessarily somebody who has to be an in-depth engineer of record on each of the scopes of work. They need to be able to speak engineer, they need to be able to speak contractor, and have the experience to navigate across those. So somebody who's coming in younger generation but has the right skill set can rise more quickly in their organization than a conventional engineer only and contractor only world.
Perfect.
Yeah, I agree there. I think that's one of my favorite parts of design build, as a youngish person, I guess, here, is that exposure to all different parts of the project, is getting to see what's going on with the design side, getting to see what's going on with the construction side. And instead of just being kind of stuck in one lane, in that, you're an estimator or scheduler or something, you get exposed to everything.
That's a great lead into this question I have here, and it says, for the DB projects we worked, what's the best way to ensure QC, QA for the project, and where does that land, and how do we follow that up when you're talking all aspects of the job? Anna, you're shaking your head. You got something to say, I can tell.
If you haven't figured out, I generally always have something to say. So don't stop me if I'm chatterboxing too much. But yeah, on the QA/QC front, a fundamental shift happens. It's still going to be that the QA is housed within the engineer of record of ensuring and the QC is still housed within the contractor side. But that shift that in the past, because the owner had the engineer and then the contractor on separate contracts, the contractor was handling the QC side, and the engineer that the owner had hired was handling the QA. In the shift to this new design build world, the design builder team is handling both QA and QC. And we see sometimes in design build projects that owners are still struggling with that mental shift. And so they'll still often double up and have their own additional owners advisors representatives that are providing additional QA QC oversight and support. And that's certainly not a problem. But the design builder team, because of the additional liability shift to the design build team, is taking a much more active role when it comes to the assurance of the overall quality for the project.
You may have just answered this question from Doug, but he said, what is the biggest pushback you hear from owners about design build? And it could be part of that, but is there any other pushback from owners that we see out there? John, you have any comments on that?
Well, I think what was just mentioned is one, the fact that they are having a hard time, not all, letting go of traditional control. And it's not just control in the QA/QC, but also control in the final look of a project. There are some nice design build projects that come up with very strict aesthetic and span length requirements and structure types and those kind of things. But when it comes down to the human level and how the infrastructure interacts with the human being, that all then gets moved over out of the realm of the owner into the realm of the client, or into the contractor and their engineering team and whatever support they have. So that there is this idea that from the owners, I think that they are giving up control, which when you see the successes, that it's really something that they need to come to grips with, but they really shouldn't fear too much that lack of control.
And just to double up on that, John, since you're here, this is a great little question. I'm deviating from our plan here, but it's a question about the DOT, and it's asking how do I assist the DOT become more comfortable with design build? So traditionally don't use that process. How do we help people use design build?
Yeah, that's a great question. It takes a lot of time sometimes. I'll give an experience. When I started the company, Corbin Engineering, I said it was started on the predicate of a design build or an inspect maintain contract, where it was led by the engineer, us, and then we hired the contracting forces to do the work. That took a sell to the secretary here in Tallahassee of the DOT, Florida DOT. And it took several meetings, but we were able to convince them that for maintenance contracts, this was 11 miles of bridge in the Florida Keys, post-tensioning, corrosion evaluation, tenant replacements, grouting, regrouting, and things like that. We really believed it was more cost effective for them to pick an engineer who understood the defects and then point and patch, as opposed to trying to produce a traditional set of construction documents and then go high, low bid a contractor. So after about 2 or 3 meetings of really good, intense time, they agreed to that situation, and so I think it's time and sharing the kind of points that Anna presented in her opening presentation, trying to give all that good feeling to those folks so they can move forward.
Jeff, I got some items to add on that particular one as well, especially when it comes to Department of Transportation's and them getting more comfortable with design build. I would recommend, number one, feel free to reach out to me and I can put you in touch with the right people. One of the fellow DBIA National Board of Directors is from Virginia Department of Transportation, and there's been a tremendous shift for, and it's on a state-by-state basis, but there are different DOTs that are much more heavily engaged in use of collaborative delivery. And so one of the best ways is getting a DOT like Virginia DOT, which has been doing much more design build, to be in touch with a different state, which still may be more hesitant and needing to understand more about the process.
Perfect.
So owner-to-owner engagement to allow them to educate. There's also some excellent education content that's available. As I mentioned, DBIA has a 3-day certification class, which is an excellent starting point. There's also executive briefing training that they can do, which is just like a half day with the executives at an organization. And there's a tremendous amount of other education content. Another thing that we cover on the last slide is if it's a DOT looking for more comfort level, there is a 3-day Design Build Institute of America transportation focused conference coming up in March in National Harbor, Maryland. And that would be an excellent way for someone to come attend that event. It happens once a year, to get a chance to engage with others in the transportation sector that would have insight of how to do design build done right. Because it's not just about design build, it's about design build done right. And those two can be drastically different.
That's excellent. Thank you. Andrew, I'm going to jump over to you now for question 3 and talk more about repair and rehab. Are design build and other collaborative delivery methods appropriate for repair and rehab projects? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's very appropriate for repair projects. As I mentioned earlier today, one of the big things is just reducing the amount of downtime of a structure, reducing the amount of time you need to take it out of service, and all this kind of planning ahead of time with the team helps with that. It also helps for the unknowns you may come up with. I know when we're putting together proposals for this, we always make sure to be clear about what unknowns we might encounter and make plans for those. In the case that they do arise, we can handle them quickly and reduce the downtime that those cause. I think it also allows the designer and builder to be comfortable with each other and comfortable with the design they put together, that the builder has the skills to do those specific repairs. And installations, I know designing CP systems, I would definitely design it differently if I knew the contractor that was installing them versus something that was going to be put out for bid.
Thank you. John,
I know we had another experience where we different contracting methods slightly, the CMGC contract for the state of Michigan, where we did a bearing replacement on the Zilwaukee bridges, massive concrete bridges in Saginaw, Michigan, $25 million worth of bearing replacement. And in that role, they quality chose or selected a contractor, PCL. They had their engineer of record, T.Y. Lin, and then we came on board working for PCL as their construction engineer to take their desired means and methods and communicate those effectively to T.Y. Lin so that in a way that they would then embrace and design the details that the contractor wanted to build. And at some point, I don't know if we've got that part of the discussion today. It's a very interesting process because you have to check your ego. Everybody in that project really wanted the best thing to happen. So you were able to get an EOR who designed what the contractor wanted to build at a cost that the owner was ready to accept. And it was just a really great place for a rehab job.
Anna?
I wanted to expand on something that Andrew said about how he would design a cathodic protection system differently if he knew the contractor versus not, because of just the comfort level. That really keys into a key concept when it comes to collaborative delivery, which is design bid build is historically you're designing to bid. So you have to look for any possible loophole that a low bid contractor is going to try to take advantage of a specification and then change order thereafter. Versus in the case of design build, you're designing to build. You're not designing to bid. So there needs to be enough information there that a highly qualified design build team can then implement the work. But you don't have to have all of that other language that's in the specifications that's to stop somebody from doing the wrong thing. You just need to make sure that you're aligning what to do the right thing is. And everyone, from an analogy standpoint, design bid build lowest price is about a limbo contest. Anybody trying to get 12 cents cheaper than the other person. In the case of design build, best value, it's actually a high jump contest. It's about soaring towards excellence.
Great, thank you very much. All right, one more question here. If you're explaining construction delivery methods to a college student, what would you tell them is the most important aspect of building a design build culture? What does the culture in this whole design build thing mean? Go ahead, John.
Sure. Well, having lived through the change from a more stoic, traditionally historically based engineering companies to crazy place. I made a comment earlier that I never worked in an office that had a ping pong table, and now we've got a ping pong table because people collaborate around ping pong tables. And so we do take breaks in the day, and we get old and young out there thinking, and we have project discussions around ping pong tables. So it's not loosey-goosey. I mean, there is some structure behind it, and we do expect, as Anna had mentioned earlier, technical excellence all along the way. But you do have to become much more familiar with each other in the way that you think and the way that you react to each other, and to have your leadership then embrace that what maybe for an old guard might seem disrespectful, in fact, is very engaging.
Andrew, I know you're a big team player. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, no, for me, I mean, communicating this to the younger generation, I guess it's the teamwork and collaboration. It's the lack of an adversarial kind of environment, that, traditional design bid build might have, is where you're looking after your own contract and, your own interests first. Obviously, you want to provide a good product, but, you're primarily looking after a single scope here. And when you get all parts together, it's definitely a different feeling. When the project goes successfully, I mean, it's very different being involved in that team and that communication and putting together a good project. It's a lot of fun.
Perfect. Anna?
From my standpoint, it's really that shift to an integrated mindset. So in a truly effective design build team, halfway through you kind of almost forget who works for which company. It's just, oh, this is Joe working on the project. This is Frank, this is Susan working on the project, and it becomes more of the team and that integrated mindset. The image that I like to bring up is the concept: if you've got a boat and you've got a hole in one side of the boat, and everybody down here is sweating because they're having to get the water out of the boat. The people at the top saying, "Man, I'm glad the hole's not on our side." Well, we're all in it together. The boat is either going to float and succeed together, or it's going to sink together. So we got to think about it through a integrated mindset approach, and that shift towards we're all going to succeed as a team. And that's what's going to make the project successful. And that also helps really drive what makes it exciting to work in design build is that concept of innovation and everybody getting to do things that are really exciting and creative and solve more challenging projects because we can integrate quickly all of those ideas more effectively.
Yeah, we talked this morning about innovation and creativity, and that's a big part of this too, right? And adopting new techniques and things. Andrew, any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, with Vector, who's a very innovative company, and they've got many different solutions for corrosion and strengthening. It's exciting being able to really implement those well in a design build situation. It's something you don't see too often in design bid build when it's prescribed kind of what you're doing. It really allows different members of the team to bring up different ideas and brainstorming and solutions and get those put into play.
Excellent. So that being said, I did have a couple of questions that seem kind of more from the owner side. And it's kind of, as an owner of this team, it's great. It's all teamwork, it's all collaboration, but you're supplying the owner a product. And it says, how much should the owner get involved on what's needed without stifling the collaboration? And also, how does an owner ensure that they get the product they want through design build? Anna?
So in terms of how much the owner should get involved, that's a big question of what type of collaborative delivery approach are you taking. When it comes to best value design build, it is inherently set up that has a lot less collaboration built in once things get launched. At the end of the day, you're collaborating up front until there's you're awarding the contract. At that point, you're more providing some guidance for the design build team to make sure that as they're moving forward, it's meeting the original expectations and objectives. But if you're providing too much hands-on active inputs through a best value design build, it's opening, as an owner, you up to either change orders or a shift of liability back over to the owner side, because there's something called Spearman doctrine, which is about as an owner begins to become more prescriptive halfway through a design build, you're actually shifting that liability. So if an owner is looking for a higher level of collaboration to be involved throughout the entire design build process, that's where I would recommend progressive design build, because that's the approach that the owner and the design builder team is hand in hand working together throughout the entire design, as opposed to having those occur on a separate track.
And just to ask further with this question, there's another great question that comes in. It says, please discuss the leader of the DB team. In the past, it may be a designer, but who's the leader? Is that just chosen by who's the strongest, or is everybody the leader? Who's the leader of the design build team?
So a couple fronts there. On any RFP and RFQ, depending on how the project is solicitation takes place, but on any submission, it's important that the design build team is outlining, both from an organizational structure standpoint as well as from a key personnel standpoint, who is taking the lead. And there needs to be an org chart as well as a communication plan, and how conflict is going to get resolved within that organization. Depending on different industries, depending on different project strategies, sometimes it can be designer-led design build teams. Sometimes it can be contractor-led design build teams. Sometimes even architect-led design build teams. If you're looking more globally, it's probably most common to have it be contractor-led design build teams, just because there's typically the highest construction values there. But depending on different market sectors and different little niches in the industry, it can be any party within the design build team can be the lead.
What do you see in the bridge world, John?
In the public transportation bridge world, it's almost exclusively for new projects. It's contractor led. Like I had mentioned, the dollar volume is so skewed towards what they are producing that they and then an owner really should require, and then the contractor obviously will require that they be responsible for the project. When we get to smaller jobs or maintenance jobs, it can change a little bit, like the one we did in the Florida Keys, where the engineer might have an opportunity to lead, but by and large, for bridge structures, it's been contractor led.
I know, Andrew, we're very heavy in, well, a couple of us are in the restoration world. I think that might be the same thing. Is it more contractor driven, you think, or?
Right. From what I've seen, yeah, mostly contractor driven, probably the same reasons that Anna and John were saying. You know, the contract value is the highest with the contractor. We've worked on, one or two jobs in the transportation world, more of like an inspect, evaluate, and repair type job, like John was mentioning, where it's been designer led.
Yeah.
Perfect.
It's really heads back to that same concept of risk allocation. In terms of holding the prime contract, there is a higher level of risk for the design builder. And so it typically makes sense to have the design build prime be the person who has the most essentially total construction dollars at stake within that design build contract. Perfect.
Well, that was a quick hour, I'm not going to lie. So with that being said, that was a great discussion and Q&A session, and thank you panelists for your insight. The session was recorded and will be available on our website and also emailed to everyone who attended. I think we got to most of the questions. There's a few more floating out there. If we haven't, we'll follow up with some emails. I just want to let people know we have a few more educational items that are coming out. One event is provided by the Concrete Alliance is the We Save Structures seminar tour. And there it is right there. The seminar is 4 hours long, lunch and PDH credits are provided, and the seminar focuses on using ACI 562 repair code and ACI 563 repair specifications to achieve durable concrete repairs. So you can scan that QR code to register. It's also on the website, and the emails you get to follow up on this also have that. Also on that website, you can find some of the previous webinar series: bridge, parking, marine structure preservation, concrete durability, non-destructive testing, and design series. And Anna's got one to add here too. You mentioned it earlier, Anna. I'll let you quick plug that.
Thank you, Jeff. There's also upcoming, for those interested in more especially related to either the transportation or the water wastewater sector, there is a transportation conference on Monday through Wednesday, and then a water wastewater conference Wednesday through Friday, both taking place co-located in National Harbor, Maryland. An excellent opportunity if you're in either of those market sectors to find out more information about design build done right. And if you want further information about that, you can just go to dbia.org and it'll have more information. Or feel free to reach out to us directly as well.
Well, once again, thank you, Andrew, John, and Anna. Fantastic panel discussion, and thanks everyone for attending. And now, like we end every webinar, let's get out there and save some structures. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you, everybody.
you.